Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the latest episode of Outlander Carnal Knowledge. And I overall enjoyed this episode, mainly along the facts that we didn't have to deal with, like, Roger and Brianna in this episode. Not that I don't like their stuff, it's just, it really is having a hard time trying to fit everything together in here. So I really like that we mainly focused on Claire and Jamie's time, mainly dealing with the Lord John kind of fallout and William Ransom's kind of stuff, with a little bit of Ian and Rachel kind of sprinkled in, and more just kind of fused in with William Ransom's things. Now, it's mainly William Ransom's stuff that kind of gets a little bit escalated a little bit quickly, and that we don't spend as much time kind of delving into, which I'm kind of like, that kind of sucks, because I kind of rather would had that kind of delved into, as well as the fallout of everything going on with Lord John, Claire, and Jamie. So let's hit off where we kind of start off, and deal mainly with William Ransom's stuff first, and then deal with the kind of meat of the episode, because we start off with Jamie pretty much taking Lord John hostage to avoid the redcoats that are coming after his ass for a reason that we will learn in this episode. But we see that William is trying to grapple with the fact that he is Jamie's son, that everybody's pretty much been lying to him. We get a really nice kind of conversation between him and Claire, which we don't really see happen that much in the show. So it was kind of cool to see these two characters kind of sit down and be a little bit more forthright with each other and honest. With William pretty much digging into, what did Jamie tell you about my mother, Geneva? What kind of happened? Did they do it before or after she was married? What's kind of going on? Was she a whore on that kind of front? And Claire's just being as calm as possible and understanding that everybody's pretty much been lying to him. She's like, I'm still your stepmother no matter what's kind of going on, so just kind of talk with me about it, before he's like trying to grapple with everything kind of going on. Now, my biggest kind of issue with this is we kind of need a little bit more of why being a bastard, and specifically more at this kind of level that he's at, pretty much in a higher kind of position, would produce the kind of reactions that he's got. I don't mind him having those reactions, but it's more that the audience is just supposed to know, oh, he's a bastard, that's why he's like pissed off and going hambo jambo like Jamie. And the thing is, we do have a kind of change from the books at the moment. I don't know what extent that is going to be happening for this, though. And that's the effect that Jenny is not here when William starts going ham and just like breaking shit. I understand his reaction on this kind of front, but I'm like, you're just breaking and like hurling shit. I understand, go outside and just kind of like work through it, screaming shit, hit some other stuff that doesn't need to be broken, or does need to be broken, so that way you're like killing two birds with one stone. But see, the thing is, in the summary that I read and what I've talked about with my mom, Jenny comes with Jamie from to America, and she's not here. I don't know if that means she didn't come with him, or that she is just fucking around for plot reasons or whatnot. So we'll have to see how that kind of works out, because that is going to vastly change certain kind of things, unless she just magically pops up at the ridge at some point and everyone's like, hello. It's like, okay, wonder how or why that happened. That would definitely be a kind of surprise for young Ian. So William then kind of pretty much goes out like pissed off and like bastard kind of shit, and this Horror's like, hey, how about we just go up and kind of deal with it? And he's like, I don't know what kind of bastard I am, but I'm kind of a bastard. She's like, an angry one, sad one, wicked one, whatever. And she pretty much tells him to wash up, but the thing is, he starts washing up his dick. And she's like, I meant that for your face. And she just says something that kind of sets his ass off, and he knocks the wine and shit out of her hand, and she's like, fuck you, man, and he pretty much fuckers off. What are you doing, you son of a bitch? So, next kind of bit we deal with him on this kind of front is that he's kind of dealing with the exodus from Philadelphia, and that's where he kind of hooks up with Ian and Rachel. They had evidently fucked off to see if like one of the Quaker friends would marry them. And this is kind of strange. I would think that they would pretty much actually do that and show it, because at this point, kind of William and Ian would be the younger kind of ones that you would glom onto as the kind of anchor romance kind of stuff. Claire and Jamie are more the kind of elder statesmen on that kind of front, where we even get some steamy kind of stuff from them in this episode. But they've had kids, they're grown, their kids have had kids. We get the kind of newlywed kind of one. That's pretty much Ian and Rachel at this point. Brianna and Roger have that kind of thing as well, but they're the kind of middle stage of that, where they've got their own kids and have to deal with their own kind of weird-ass shit that they're dealing with. But the thing is, he's still dealing with all this and being pissed off, and decides to go after Ian because Ian has lied to him. And he brings that up as they're pretty much fighting, and he's kind of pissed off that Rachel is with him and they're trying to get married. And he doesn't really explain this very well. He just beats the they just start fighting, and then the other red coats come and just pretty much take Ian away. And she's like, deal with this. You're making him take a fall for something you fucking did. And he's like, nuh-uh, nuh-uh. And she's like, and he's like, oh, what are you gonna do? You gonna hit me? And she's like, phew. And she's like, now you've done all this bullshit, and you made me compromise my principles. Fuck you, man. It's like, well, you done fucked that up. And then it kind of links up with Jamie, where Jamie's like, listen, because Jamie's pretty much riding around. Young Ian's like, you're alive! Yay! And then he's like, listen, you go and tell him what happened, and get young Ian out of this shit, motherfucker. He's like, alright, cool. Does it, and then he gets linked up with these assholes pretty much going to a brothel, and he goes with Arabella / Jane, and he's pretty much does it to kind of protect her from the Captain Asshole dude. You don't really need to go much more in detail with that. And he just, listen, you can sleep. I don't want to do this shit. And they still bang anyway. He's like, why did you make me break my word kind of shit? And it's just like, oh, okay. Like, if it had been given a little bit more room to breathe, it would have had a little bit more narrative punch and impact. But we'll kind of see what kind of goes on with this as they kind of have an alright sex scene. It's like, alright, because she was pretty much going to sleep in the bed. And then she wanted William to pretty much come in as well. He does, and then they just kind of bang. It's like, alright. And she's like, well, I got my honor too. It's like, oh, okay. Cool. Alright. And he's just overwhelmed by pretty much everything. It's like, I don't really fault it on like the actor's part. It's just everything's kind of happening at once, and we kind of have to get through this as fast as possible to a degree. So he has to go through an accelerated kind of thing of this, and it's just like, come on. So main bulk that we get is dealing with, like, we get out, we see that John is happy that Jamie's alive, but then he's like, I've had carnal knowledge of your wife. He's like, oh, okay, kind of explain this situation to me. He doesn't really get into the whole kind of spy aspect, but pretty much going on to the effect that they were mourning him, and that they fucked each other, and they were both fucking him, and then Jamie just kind of goes ram, bam, fucking on, and beating his ass, and like fucks up his eye, which lines up with the whole kind of book. But then, as they're pretty much in the middle of hashing this shit out, we then get into side quest territories for both of them. Now, I don't want to misconstrue things here. When I say side quest kind of territories here, I know that these aspects are pretty important. However, with this adaptation of how it's doing, it's more like, do we need this? Because sometimes when you're doing an adaptation, even if there's some kind of important kind of bit, sometimes you have to reconfigure what's kind of going on. Whereas a book, you have pages sometimes that you can detail something and kind of go through a thing. Sometimes if you're trying to hone in and get the kind of important essence of what's going on within a story, you have to like cut things or configure them in a different kind of way. Because here, they're like dealing with this shit, and then these like random ass Continental Army people pop up and be like, hey, because they got a coat and stuff for John that evidently had reactivation orders for him, and they're like, he's a spy and shit. And then we pretty much get this info dump that one of his family members was pretty much was involved in this massacre of Continental Army people. and that they pretty much want to hang him for that kind of shit. It's like, okay, Lord John didn't do it, and he doesn't really have any useful information. I mean, it would just be better to kind of ransom him. If you're thinking logically, and the thing is, you have to go and actually go through that logic with these characters. Because sometimes you're like, okay, they need to do this so that way Lord John's in trouble, and then he has to escape and do weird fucking shit. It's like, okay, but you can, like, do that well. You just need to actually just hone in on it and do it. Because he talks with pretty much this higher up kind of dude. He's like, you got any information or anything like that? He's like, I really fucking don't. I'm not a spy. I'm not even reactivated. I just have this thing. Because one of the servants had to tell Claire that one of the higher ups for the British Army was looking for Lord John because he's been reactivated and all that shit. It's like, oh, fuck. We also get that Jamie, let's see, he kind of side quests a little bit too to get to Morgan, and we learned that the reason that he was running from the Redcoats is they wanted to search his ass. He's like, I got something that I can't let him see, because he explained that to Lord John, and they were like fucking around before they got into the carnal knowledge of what. So he then gets pretty much brought up to George Washington and finds that he's been able to finagle support from the French. He's like, all right, cool. Brigadier General Jamie. It's like, okay, and we still have not dealt with that by the end of this episode. It's like, oh, shit. Alright. It was almost like that Colonel Morgan dude was like, I've got a dude who wants me to be in, like, dress uniform. I almost felt like he was doing this for Jamie, so that way Jamie would kind of be above him, and then be like, you know what, you can just fucking wear whatever the fuck you want kind of shit to work. I mean, we're fighting motherfuckers here. It was kind of cool to see that Jamie did not play off with Washington that he had not met him before, but brought up the whole kind of Governor Tryon kind of bit and that whole kind of play, and that Martha was the one that kind of like forced him to kind of go to it. But he's like, you know what, you did a really good job. You turned something that you turned what the Loyalists were able to do to our advantage. It's a really good kind of thing for you to do. So we're just upgrading you to Brigadier General. Let's see how this kind of works. It's like, and it's funny because I'm like, wow, this kind of just fell in his lap, and Jamie's like, it's like the prime example of certain kind of things that you sometimes see in video games, where you're like, wow, things are just plot demanding and just falling in this motherfucker's lap, and even the character's like, is this really happening? Is this real life? Is this a fantasy? What the fuck is going on here? So then we pretty much get back. We see, of course, that's kind of linking up with Ian, and he gets back to Claire and pretty much talking to him. Jamie pretty much having explanations of what was kind of going on. He acts pretty much like a bonehead on trying to figure out what's kind of going on here, but he's trying to figure it out as well as Claire, her explaining that it kind of happened here, that they kind of performed triage on each other because she was contemplating killing herself. And this really seemed to affect Jamie as well, because he's like, shit, fuck. And yes, it's one thing to say that, like, yeah, we're together, you're mine, I'm yours. Death won't even stop that, but what happens when one of you does die and that completely breaks you? Do you continue forward? Do you find comfort in someone else? They were both, of course, kind of had something that even Claire couldn't really describe, other than the whole kind of triage aspect, which I kind of liked. This wasn't an easy kind of thing to talk through, and I loved the execution of this here, because it was a messy, even not completely conclusive kind of discussion and examination of this. Kind of in a very adult way, where there isn't a clear-cut kind of answer with this. Even though they are trying to kind of suss things out and understand what's going on before they kind of like get together and kind of bang their asses out to kind of like, we're back together and kind of shit. And Jamie, he kind of comes off like a dickhole in certain aspects before they kind of start talking through and understanding what's been kind of happening. She doesn't bring up that she was pretty much getting ready to be kind of taken out as like a spy and shit, which that's an important kind of bit. Yes, you were both kind of drunk and everything, but you also kind of married each other, and you were both very much grieving for Jamie, and you did what you thought you needed to do to make sure that everything worked out, because she was going to try and kill herself, and it looked like Lord John felt like he was going to pretty much throw himself off a cliff. It's I understand that Jamie does feel vast love and everything for them, and her bringing up the whole kind of thing for that, and then Jamie kind of linking it up with Geneva and what happened with Willie and William, and how John's friendship was a similar kind of style to that. I liked that. That was really kind of cool, where they're talking about, yes, different kind of things, but yes, they have their similarities, and how even Lord John was still kind of pivotal for those kind of things. It's like, wow, that worked for me. And I think was like a very good key aspect. We also then see that Lord John does link up with Denzel. He's like, your eye, you're probably going to have to wear an eye patch a couple weeks, months for it to kind of like, because it goes from like, oh, that's not that bad, to holy fucking shit, it's fucking like cracked as hell. But he's able to pretty much give him a thing to have him be able to escape, and then he's like on his way to escaping. So it's like, oh, okay, now we gotta kind of have to deal with this. I understand its importance in the books and everything. However, we've vastly changed up stuff because there's things that happened with Henry Christensen and Fergus and like Germain. Well, Germain. I don't say Count Germain, but Germain, and everything that kind of links up there. The adaptation changes. I don't mind changes if they kind of make sense, and you can kind of see where they're kind of coming from and where they're kind of going. I don't need it completely and utterly telegraphed that they're going to be doing certain kind of stuff. However, I have been burned by Game of Thrones. Okay? Now, that was a show that knew how to adapt things when it had enough material to adapt it. The problem gets into the effect when you attempt to adapt an outline. That is where you then have to fill in certain blanks yourself, and that's where it gets fucking messy. Outlander does not have that issue. They, for some reason, are like, let's finish this fucking shit, and jamming all the books together when they didn't need to do that. Where they could have had a season. You can have... Normally, it's nice to have seasons that have the same kind of length. However, if you need more episodes, go for more episodes. If you need less episodes, go for less episodes. If you've got less episodes but can like seed in stuff from other books or whatnot and kind of get to a nice kind of stopping point, do that. Don't just be like, you know what, we're going to take all of these kind of books and just kind of bum rush them at the end. It does a disservice to the actors that are able to do very good jobs of portraying these characters, because Claire, John, Jamie were fucking on point. Young Ian was great as well as Rachel and William as well. Banging out on it. It's a disservice to the story and the fans. Now, that doesn't mean everything from the book has to be the show. It's the important kind of bits, the things that really resonate for the story. Like if you're adapting the origin stories of like Batman or Spider-Man, you need those kind of pivotal moments of like, well, I mean, the MCU kind of did a kind of change up where we didn't get the Uncle Ben kind of moment, and I think that actually kind of worked within its kind of favor. However, we had other kind of aspects that kind of worked within that same kind of thing, like losing Tony Stark and losing Aunt May for Peter and giving that whole thing of power and responsibility, the loss of Bruce Wayne's parents as Batman, the loss of Krypton for Kal-El and Superman. If you take out these elements and you kind of reconfigure and change them, you have to be very careful with it. It's how the adaptation does it. And if you just like bum rush and if you decide to do a new not a new Batman, if you decide to do a new Superman one, and you decide to cram in all this stuff together where he's we see him get married to Lois Lane. We see him have kids. We see Doomsday pop up. We see Doomsday kill him. We see him get resurrected in the same kind of film. You have completely overstuffed that fucking thing. It's kind of like what the studios and Sony did with like Spider-Man 3. Like, you didn't need Sandman, Harry Osborn Goblin, and Venom all together at once. It's like, woo, woo. But that also leads in the... It's funny that Sony is involved with that Outlander in regards to Starz, and also with Spider-Man, because for some fucking reason they always want to bum rush the Sinister Six and attempted to make a universe that was just made out of like every kind of character that was connected with Spider-Man without Spider-Man. That is like if you decided to make an Outlander show that didn't center on Claire and Jamie. You have your anchor characters. You could potentially do it. It just sometimes won't make much sense. So, I do think that this was the strongest episode for me so far, mainly because it was focusing on the aspects that I liked. It didn't have vastly strange cuts or transitions or editing that completely took me out of the flow. I'm like doing oh, now we're on to Roger. Oh, now we're on to Brianna. Because sometimes I'm like, I just want to focus on this kind of story. I almost think that a lot of the Roger and Brianna stuff could have just been packaged into one episode and kind of dealt with it that way. That possibly could have just then seeded like the last couple minutes to getting us back to the important kind of stuff with like Jamie and Claire. Yeah, but I do like this for the character developments that we've gotten with Lord John, and his kind of whole escalation. The escalation of Jamie's status within the Continental Army. William trying to deal with the learning of the truth, and it's important because I don't think he truly, him breaking shit, not the kind of route that I would say to go on, but him being like, everybody has lied to me. Claire, Ian, Jamie, Lord John. Who am I? It's vastly having him question who he is as a person, his sense of self. And I think that was really hit on very well here, and I gotta give it to him on that. And then also, Jamie's relationship with Lord John and Claire, and what them learning of his death, and of course coming back means. So, I'm interested to see where the next couple episodes will go and where we'll kind of end off. They're going to have a lot of work to do in the last season, depending upon what they're able to do and actually where they're going to end it. If they're going to adapt Book 10, which isn't out yet, or if they're going to end on Book 9, which has an end point. You could essentially, theoretically, do a couple seasons and maybe a movie to cap it off. They've already done a prequel show that could like tie it over, but they're building it as the final season. There are other kind of examples of being able to do this, where certain other shows have done elongated movies to finish things off. Certain anime have also done this route as well, sometimes adapting certain kind of books into just a movie. Demon Slayer is a good example of this, where they decided to do the Mugen Train arc as a movie that worked out pretty well, and then they adapted it as a TV show, an anime series show that had episodes and everything that worked out well as well. And they're actually going to finish out with a series of movies the rest of the arcs for Demon Slayer. Well, at least one arc. I think there's another arc that's at the end, but I don't know if they're going to actually adapt that as a movie. I know that sounds weird to go tangentially, but it's very much asking the questions of how is this going to end? And is this actually going to end like the books? Or are they going to go off book and have to do their own ending? Or are they going to do their own ending? Because that is another thing that also kind of happens sometimes with adaptations, mainly that we see within anime and manga. Sometimes anime is adapting a manga and it's not finished yet, and they decide, fuck it, we're done, and make their own anime ending. This prime example of that would be Full Metal Alchemist. They did an anime, and then the manga finished itself, and then they did another adaptation of it, and actually did what the manga did, because they kind of veered onto a completely different kind of plane. That still works. But I would prefer that not to happen here, because sometimes you only get one kind of shot to do these kind of adaptations before you kind of hopefully would come around to do another kind of adaptation on this. I don't think this isn't bad enough to be like it's a complete failure. I'm not saying that. But when you're just, you could have just taken a little bit of a break. I'm not saying take like 30 fucking years and then everybody's aged out of the roles. Some people are fucking dead, and you're trying to like have a kid like who's now fucking 30 years old be that kid again. No. Sometimes you can take a pause thing, pump out the prequel series that you've done, and then come back for it if you need to. It's these things worry me. Even though this was a really good episode, these things worry me. So we'll see what kind of happens and what goes on. So those are my opinions on the episode. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.